0.
I don't know how to do that. So
Actually,
This is okay?
yeah, that's fine. Can you
Sorry,
decrease it? Turn off the video and audio first. The speaker doesn't consent. to being captured. David, the only person on that team that consents is
Okay, okay. Sorry, it's my bad.
Is it okay? Yeah. I think.
Once it.
If I had the preference of a mediocre lifestyle, I wouldn't be debating here in the Novice finals. Now, a few things I'm going to do in my speech today. First, some like characterizations that Prime Minister missed in the speech, and then I'll move on to my argumentation structure. First off, in terms of how what mediocre actually means, it means that the quality of state of life is that of being average or less than average. So it's not just average in itself, but that of less than average in itself. So moving on to how a mediocre lifestyle would play about, we tell you that there are different levels of a mediocre lifestyles based on different demographic groups, based on different age groups itself, and based on different races and all that. But I'll move on to that in my argumentation structure later on. So two things I'm going to talk, and the rest of my rebuttals will be integrated. So firstly, in terms of how stagnant development is harmful for society, and secondly, how it is harmful if an individual does not experience growth. Firstly, in terms of how stagnant development is harmful to society as a whole, we tell you that in historical development over the years, things such as innovative ideas and innovative inventions helped mankind move forward in terms of moving on from being able to ride on horses to being able to drive cars, things such as auto driving cars later on in the future, and things that it makes life easier as a whole in terms of being able to do things easier in different ways and being able to have better transport, better improvements in science and better infrastructure as a whole. So even innovations such as SpaceX or Tesla and auto-driving cars, all this comes from the innovation by stepping out of the comfort zone in the first place. Now we need to understand that calculated risk is in contention in today's debate in terms of how it plays about to an individual when an individual makes a decision in order to invest in a particular business or in order to start up a business of its own, and that defeats the whole propagation on the other side about how individuals are more likely not want to invest in a particular business or set up a particular business which has a unique product or what say. We tell you that the uniqueness of this product and the fact that it's something new and different in itself would attract people to invest in that company, would attract people to buy their product as a whole. We tell you that these high returns are highly rewarding to the individual in a sense where they are able to step out of the comfort zone, step out of the echo chamber of constantly being able of constantly failing in that particular field or whatnot. Moving on, in terms of how this generally leads to the better development of society's needs and the better development of how but before that,
clarification. How does this link back to the mediocrity of life or whatever kind of life that you're proposing right now?
We tell you that this benefits life in a sense where it helps both the individual who has the business and has the product as a whole, and it benefits society as a whole once a new product or invention has come about. In terms of I talked to you about how the transition from riding on horses to driving cars, and that transition can only happen and that innovation can only happen when you have this new development, when you take the risk to invest in a particular product or have that development as a whole. So now moving on in terms of how harmful it is to an individual when that individual does not experience growth. We tell you since there are different levels of a mediocre lifestyle. For example, if a minority Indian lady would be forced to marry off to some random person for economic stability in the first place, we tell you that that person is unable to step out of the comfort zone and will forever suffer in that echo chamber of being constantly oppressed with these oppressed structures, because she has to marry some random dude, because that person will be the only person that can provide her financial stability and economic stability and all that. And we tell you that under our side, we tell you that fighting stereotypes and stigmatization against these individuals and being able to move out of the echo chamber is far better. For example, in terms of other characterizations like women having forced to be stay-at-home moms, having to look after their kids instead of being working ladies, or having their own businesses and being able to step out of the comfort zones instead of just being confined to them in the pursuits of education or being able to have a particular job in the first place. So we tell you that's extremely harmful, because these individuals will forever be like stagnated into a sense that they do not experience growth, and the happiness of an individual usually comes from things such as like achievements that makes people like around yourself happy, and makes that individual in itself happy by these like by being able to help other individuals or being able to achieve things in your life. For example, like getting monetary benefits which come as a result of being able to sell a successful product and whatnot. And we further tell you about two other stakeholders in today's debate. We tell you that people who often face depression in itself is far worse under like their side, because these people tend to not be able to get out of this echo chamber of depression and sadness, and they tend to commit to like these like extremities of not being able to like being able to get out of this like echo chamber as a whole. And in terms of how minorities are generally hurt more, we tell you that these minorities are generally hurt more because once they experience these like oppressive structures throughout their lives, and they constantly are stuck in that particular echo chamber throughout their lives as a whole, we tell you that these minorities are often like hurt like externally and internally, because they experience a different kind of like mediocre lifestyle. Sit down. They experience a different kind of like mediocre lifestyle as opposed to like higher income individuals, or even like middle income individuals and like lower income individuals. We tell you that that's a spectrum we have to consider in today's debate, and side government is not debating with the spectrum. We tell you that these types of individuals, especially the lowest common denominators, face all these harms and are unable to, let's say, get a proper form of like life in the first place. For example, their lives are confined to being able to work in like blue collar jobs, are confined not in being able to move on and like pursue an education which allows them to go into white collar jobs, or allows them to be able to have like a better lifestyle, to have better lifestyle in terms of being able to financially support their kids and have that economic stability that they've so long been wanting for, if they're constantly stuck in a echo chamber where they're forced not to develop, and that development is generally stagnant towards that particular individual. So we show you two things in today's debate. We show you how like stagnant development is generally harmful for society, not just the individual in itself, and we show you that how stagnant development is also harmful for the individual when he or she does not experience growth in the process. And this highly like harms minorities and like people who face this like depression as a whole as well. With that, I've been proud to post.
Thank you. To continue the case from government, let's have Deputy Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You wanna?
You have to.
Do you consent?
Tiffany, you don't consent.
You consent?
You consent.
Okay, should I? I don't know how LO's speech is going to answer the standards of this debate, because we still don't know how their world looks like. Yeah. I don't know what the kind of development and investment they're talking about is going to link back to the mediocrity and the happiness of people in general. There was no engagement on this part about how people are likely to access satisfaction and able to live life better. Satisfaction exists on a scale imposed onto your own life. So the moment under their world, the scale is going to be limitless. It's going to be endless. You are constantly pursuing things that you might not be able to achieve. Yeah. And even if you do, there won't be a point where you reach a complete satisfaction. There's no limit to it. It means that under our world, it means that society is less likely to condemn you for not achieving things. People around you are likely to support you for living a mediocre life. You yourself are less likely to blame yourself for not being able to achieve these standards that you impose on yourself. We live in a world where there is an overarching narrative that life has to achieve its greatest satisfaction, which I think we can achieve on our side if the bar of the satisfaction has a limit to it. Yeah. On government side, like it's more the stability and mediocrity is able to bring you safety, the structural oppression that they want to talk about, an Indian woman in India, it's likely that they're going to be safe rather than coming out and fight for feminism where the entire society is against them.
Yeah.
We think safety under our side is likely to happen, and these people are more protected, more happiness in life, more satisfaction, because now nobody is against you. The majority of the society will not condemn you. Like mediocrity can be envisioned as something that can bring you maximum satisfaction because you now know your end goal and where you can finish, where the limit to your satisfaction is. On opposition side, they'll have to defend a world where the bar of satisfaction will never reach the brim of it. This looks like you living in a condo, moving on to a terrace, moving on to a semi-D villa, etc. Like this moving on means that there will never be a point where you'll be satisfied in your life. You're constantly pursuing something that a lot of other people cannot achieve. As Catherine has told you, it's a pyramid where the higher you go, the lesser people can access to it. We think we want to cater to the majority, and this only is an exclusive benefit on our side. People are driven to pursue many things that they can't achieve, and the standard here is that life is better on our side. It means that there's an end goal. People feel that certain aspects of their lives can be fulfilled. A couple of responses. Firstly, about stability and fighting stereotypes. Understand that the socio-economic climate in every place is different. There are times where structural oppression, when you try to stand out and talk about it, people are against you. If you live a mediocre and stable life, you are likely to follow the structural, even though there's oppression, it's likely that you're accustomed to it. It's likely that you are used to it. It's likely that you stay quiet about it. This is good because safety is now on your side. Secondly, about how it makes the development of business stagnant and all. The innovation, invention, investments, while it's all true, I don't see a link of how it relates to the life of people that are living under their world. I can't paint a picture for them because I don't know how the characterization will look like. And talking about how they will not experience growth, stagnation will not exist in both worlds. Under our world, people will grow. People still develop. People still live their lives. It's just that it's a lot lesser, and we think if people are better off without the kind of standards that you impose on them, we think we win this debate. Firstly, talking about how it's more accessible, that this limit allows more satisfaction and it's more accessible. Catherine told you that it caters especially well to the vulnerable groups of the people. It's accessible to the vast majority of the people. This means that there is an actual achievable goal to the limit. Here are two things. There's a point where you achieve it, where you achieve satisfaction. The second point is when you are able to continue that satisfaction. Let's talk about when you achieve it first. Achieving it, like, we need to acknowledge that a lot of resources are finite, which enhances the point that Catherine talks about, where the pyramid is going to be, the pyramid structure exists. The moment life becomes more accessible, the vulnerable groups have a better chance of breaking free from the expectation that the society always wants them to achieve. This means when they achieve certain things or this mediocre life, they're less likely to pursue things that they will never have access to. They're less likely to pursue things that only privileged groups have access to, and this means that they will make informed decisions. They're likely to live a better life. Secondly, talking about continuing the goal. This is another satisfaction that will be exclusive on our side. No engagement on the pyramid of how resources are finite, on how limit is more accessible under our world. Being able to hit a goal and keeping up with a lifestyle means that people around you is going to be they're likely to feel happier for you because you firstly less likely to blame yourself. Secondly, people around you won't impose the kind of standards that a lot of society now do to people. This means that when you're able to upkeep this kind of lifestyle, you're likely to find the kind of happiness just being just being stable, being happy. Go ahead.
Under your society, individuals who want to promote themselves and become more than just the mediocre society is unable to do so because of the standard that your society have placed on them.
I don't understand the question. What do you mean by?
So individuals who wants to go the extra mile rather than maintain stable are unable to do so under your society because everyone tells you to remain mediocre and stable.
They have a preference to do so. Yeah, everyone can choose. But under your world, these people will be blamed because they want to pursue a mediocre life. Under our world, they have a choice of choosing whether you want to be mediocre or not. This is an exclusive benefit and you have to acknowledge it. You can't just push the blame that everyone will blame you for become mediocre. At least people now will not be painted as the victim. As a conclusion, our case brought to you a couple of things that limit this sort of stability and mediocre is likely to bring you safety. It's likely to bring you the approval from your society. It's likely to bring you the kind of satisfaction that you yourself can only impose on yourself. Proud to propose.
Yeah.
Thank you. To continue the case, let's have Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Yeah.
I have a cousin. She got straight A+ in her SPM. She was the most beautiful amongst all. And I'm also from my dad's side at least, we're from a Pakistani background, which means it's extremely patriarchal in nature. And what is expected of you if you're a woman in that culture is that you want to get married. Literally, that's what her parents thought was the most important thing for her, and it was very easy to get her married off. She was so beautiful, so smart. But what ended up happening to her, and because she stick to being mediocre, she didn't fight back when her parents say you should go ahead and just get married like everyone else within our culture. She ended up in a very abusive marriage, and she didn't actually fight against it when her parents told her to do so. Right? I think side government need to engage with the fact that different contexts exist within the mediocrity, right? Because that girl could have very much became me if I didn't actually fight back and say I do not want a mediocre life. Let's talk about how the So what they're going to propose on their side is literally settling with what you can have confined with within your society and environment, right? This oftentimes looks very arbitrary in nature. Why? Because your environment is based on like what your race is, what your family background is, perhaps what country you're born in, right? And oftentimes this could look like you being a black person, you being born into a very toxic family, your country being like somewhat conservative in nature, right? We tell you that this is extremely harmful at a point in which where you leave the very oppressed minority within this arbitrariness and tell them, hey, you should be okay with your mediocrity. Just take what life has handed to you and make what will you of it. We tell you that that's a very harmful narrative to push. What do we want on our side? Firstly, we want constant striving for the betterment of that particular individual. Secondly, we want them to have goals, right? This looks like short-term, long-term goals. And thirdly, I'm going to quote Mubarak, you need to be hungry for more. What does the status quo look like? People in status quo don't actually strive beyond the ordinary, right? You see only very specific individuals, like perhaps Sheikh Sadiq, who goes out there and wants to fight for the oppressed, right? Or perhaps like very, very limited people who you can name, like perhaps what's his name? Elon Musk, who actually wanted to go beyond, beyond just having vehicles, but actually vehicles which did not just destroy our environment, right? These were things that people strive for beyond the ordinary. These are things that will not exist on their side, at a point which people just choose to opt into a mediocre life, and they need to tell us why it's not going to exist. Let's stop first issue, innovation, right? Realize that innovation stems off people pushing themselves further. Innovation, by definition, means that you just going further than what you already have. Things as simple as people back then only having horses and then moving on to actually creating wheels and then creating cars, right? This process would not exist if people would just content with the mediocrity of life, right? You already have horses, we're okay with that. People who actually pushed beyond the borders and said, hey, why don't we have something beyond being on top of our head, right? Or something that's easier to drive. These are people who push the boundaries that will not exist on the outside. They need to tell us why it's okay for us to have people who will not work on smartwatches, right? These are things that you necessarily get, technologies that you necessarily get that betters the lifestyle of this particular individual themselves. And also the society, right? How? This looks like perhaps when you create a smartwatch, right? You get money in return. You get rewards to yourself. People respect you more. Your name is literally written down in the history, right? As opposed to on their side. I don't really see this satisfaction on their side, right? No. But on our side, you literally get a huge amount of satisfaction and happiness at a point in which where you actually meet your mark in the world. And this is sure best case scenario where you're someone great like Elon Musk, or perhaps someone who actually created Apple, right? But we tell you that these are things that are worth working for, right? People like Sim, who necessarily never thought that he could come to a Novice final. If he had given up, if he had necessarily be okay with mediocrity, right? He would not get the feeling he's getting right now, i.e. the euphoria he's getting right now from being in a final. We tell you that we really just regret a simple life, and we would rather not have that. No. But let's talk about this idea that people would just drop out of colleges, right? We think it's great. If people want to drop out of colleges, that's great. But let's analyze the process that happens when people actually drop out of college, right? Realize that people actually take calculated risk at the end of the day, right? People don't just think hey, I don't like college, I want to drop out. It's a long process, because realize that in status quo, people are very scared of change. We're not very comfortable with what we have. We're very comfortable just continuing life with what it is as it is. So at a point in which where an individual is going to take a risk that, hey, maybe university life is just not for me. Maybe this 4 years is such a waste of time. I'm really good at businesses. I could just open a business. We tell you that that is a calculated process that people are taking, and that necessarily means, because people are rational, that it's a good decision at the end of the day. Therefore, it's really important for you to prioritize our world where people actually are constantly expected to push the norm, as opposed to on their side where the narrative is that people are expected to just stay mediocre. Why? Because realize that their burden is to prove to us, firstly, why satisfaction on their side is good to begin with. They never told us what this satisfaction looks like. It could even it could literally be nothing, right? Because realize that this literally looks like you going to a daily job, and it literally just becomes a routine. You don't feel any satisfaction, no happiness, no euphoria from your work. It's literally just a boring routine. Why would people actually have a driving factor or motivation to even live in their side, right? Because your life literally becomes a routine on their side. People are more likely to lose meaning in life. People are more likely to want to give up on their life, right? But also realize that they never talked about how minorities are fucked. Realize that right now in status quo, minorities are going through a lot of things, right? You cannot just come out here and say life is shit, but just deal with it, right? This looks like you saying no to people who literally are trying to break the patriarchal structure, right? Perhaps transgenders will not push for a transgender toilet in their world, right? You need to tell me why it's okay to put these oppressed minorities and tell them, hey, you need to be okay with your oppression. Don't fight for anything more. Realize that also they didn't actually tell us why they're okay with this trade-off. But beyond that, I'm really, really proud of this.
All right, thank you. Let's have government whip. Here.
Oh.
Pratibha. Yeah.
Okay. Have to press.
And we're on.
Nice. Thank you.
Go Aming!
Thank you, Vishal. Okay. Can I start?
Yeah.
I think what Op failed to realize is that happiness exists on a spectrum in which every single individual have different definitions of what happiness looks like. So we think the happiness that exists under our world not only caters to the rich and like middle income people, but we think under our side of opposition, we cater to the individuals who needs a source of hope. It needs a form of like some form of narrative to tell you that you cannot stay in your own space. We think under their world, they create a world in which like wives get killed by abusive husbands. They create a world under their side of African children dying because people have no incentive to create technologies to create like those straws where you drink dirty water that's clean. Yeah, those are the kind of things that don't exist under their side, because under their side, those scientists are complacent with their life. They don't have any incentive to strive for the goal of like trying to change the world, so on and so forth. Therefore, in my speech, I will talk to you about what kind of satisfaction is better. Like the satisfaction that comes from you going further, or like the satisfaction that has maintained. And secondly, my speech will also consist of the discussion of who maximizes like
clarification.
How much people actually get satisfied under our world. No, thank you. But before that, just one clarification is that under our world, we just encourage them to have goals and strive for more. We're not saying that they are forced to leave this immediately, because under their side, the logic also exists under their side. In which when you have a society which forces you to be mediocre, those individuals want to help other people, wants to create technology that can actually like create change to the world. It's hard to do so because society tells them for you to conform and become mediocre at the end of the day. So under the first issue about what kind of happiness that exists, because they
clarification.
No, thank you. Because because they told you that the more you do, the more likeliness of failure. We think in that particular instance, for example, the happiness that you get comes from number one, self-actualization, that you are doing something. Like the fact that I feel down, and cry because I lost a round. I feel gratification because I have learned something to help me improve. Under their side, like whatever their ambition that they wanted to talk about, they never got that greater satisfaction. Under their side, they never really realized what kind of potential happiness that they can get. Because in a world where everyone is mediocre, you never go out of your way to find that greater happiness, because we think the point of you living in this world is for you to have like exhilaration, is for you to have like appreciation of the life that you have. We think only then is when life means it has meaning for you. We think this happens in certain circumstances when like if you want to succeed in like debates, or like want to succeed in your own industry, we think only that happens under our side. Number two, they also said that like satisfaction, like access of satisfaction cannot the access of satisfaction is for everyone. We think not. Okay, so we think the satisfaction that happened on their side never materialized, because some individuals for example in women in patriarchal societies don't get the same satisfaction. They are forced to maintain and their abusive husbands simply because they believe because they simply believe that when the moment in which they leave their husbands with income is the point in which that they may that they may suffer from like
clarification.
No, thank you. That suffer from like external problems like economic, so on and so forth. We think the comparative here is that we have this woman. We prefer this woman leaving this abusive husband. Like they go out and explore the world, like have autonomy over themselves rather than die a like dreadful death in the house of the abusive husband. We think that happens more likely on their side. Image like, for example, like women like Malala, Alicia, Ocasio-Cortez never fights for the rights of these individuals because these individuals will believe
clarification.
that these individuals will believe that it is okay for me to just like just make policies or whatever, but not cater for the individuals who they're supposed to be fighting for. Yes.
I have your debate falls in two ways. Firstly, technology development is not accessible to everyone. Secondly, oppressed people have no safety net and no political capital. I don't know how it fits into your debate and how you protect these people.
I mean, like, so the thing is, like, so if you want to argue the economic argument about not everyone can get the resources, we think that the point in which that businessmen like for example Bill Gates is able to create technology like food, which is oftentimes like innovation. The purpose of innovation is to make things cheaper. Like now, not everyone has to buy a freaking typewriter to make documents. Like they don't have to spend time writing like on papers and pen. We think in our world, we create a world in which in which caters to individuals who it makes it easier for the poor people. Okay, so we think also like they argument about coercion, right? We think like this coercion argument is irrelative because coercion happens everywhere. We think like this point of coercion couldn't really exist under their world. So we think let's move on to the second issue about like who gains the most satisfaction, because under their side, privileged individuals are the only individual who is able to gain this form of happiness. We have proven to you how in current status quo, like individuals like women in like conservative countries, like kids in Africa depends on people going the extra mile for them. We think that under their world, when scientists, for example, and businessmen see that it is okay for just me to continue selling cars, for example, without necessarily creating new technology to like make sure the world is a happier place, we think that is a point in which that these women suffer. It is a point in which these kids will suffer because they don't have like the technology to begin with. We think, yeah. Okay, so we think under our side, we have shown to you explicitly that when you have technological advancements, when you have technological advancements, will not only help a lot of people. When you have technological advancements, you can help the society at large. We think we help them better because I also think that when you talk about like social movements, for example, like the Black Lives Matter movement or the feminist movement, if you don't have any individuals who want to fight not only for yourself, wants to fight for other people, that can only exist in a world where people see that your life is you should make your life meaningful rather than just mediocre and stable, because they don't have the meaningful life, because they feel like it is okay for them to still maintain in a world where it's just fine to maintain with a minimum wage. We think under our side, we have proven to you the first is that the happiness comes from a spectrum, and then different kind of happiness exists like for oppressed minorities or like the rich people. And we also think that the happiness that some people get can actually benefit the individual in terms of technological and economic ways. So never been prouder to oppose.
Thank you. To start off with the replies, let's have opposition reply. Here.
I think Gov's case sounds very idealistic, but not grounded at all. Outcomes were very far-fetched to non-existent. They cannot win this debate. But let's talk about the reasons why they lost this debate. Telos cannot come up here and get away with throwing around template arguments of happiness without actually contextualizing it towards the ground. We contextualize the arguments towards the rich people and the poor people. They never showed us how even the rich people, best case scenario on their side, are going to have any form of dissatisfaction. Because it's just intuitive to believe that humans are unsatisfied in every smallest little things, right? Like my nail polish is too hard to put on, or just stupid things like that, right? People are always like complaining about dumb things. But then we brought you the more important argument, i.e. the poor, the oppressed, not engaged at all on their side. We tell you that just by the fact that, that they were unengaging, their argument was just very template and not context specific, they cannot win this debate. But secondly, let's talk about the fact that they weren't engaging with us, right? Even within my argument, I already told you how there are already structural barriers within these oppressed communities that looks like race, things that you cannot change, just very arbitrary in nature, right? But then they came up and said that there is this safety net at a point in which you don't speak. It just doesn't make sense. These oppressions are already happening in status quo. How do you break them? Like on their side, they just want to put you, like force you to swallow these oppressions that you're having. While literally the girl in India could be the next being raped in that bus. Like these safety nets that they're talking about, that they did not analyze at all within their speech, is a facade at best, right? We don't think they can win this debate. But like, how do you then judge this debate, right? What do you prioritize within this debate? I think the most important issue that should be valued the most is the importance, or like the importance of the most vulnerable in this situation, right? Because realize that some issues are time sensitive. Because this girl who literally all she needed to say was like, maybe I don't want to be normal like all those other Pakistani girls. Maybe I want to further my studies. Maybe I just want to break out of this norm. It's small things like that that we reward on our side at a point in which where you have a culture that encourages breaking out of the norm, and that you solve major issues, right? She could literally have better information at a point in which where she's more mature and more informed as of like what kind of husband she wants to marry into, or like what kind of relationship she wants to opt into. Like some issues are just extremely time sensitive in nature that we think have to have more value. But secondly, right, realize that these are vulnerable individuals that we brought forward to you, right? They literally just washed it off. These are extremely vulnerable people that literally needs just a slight extra push to fight on. They literally just need a reason to keep fighting because their life is already shit in status quo. What they literally need is like, maybe with me putting in a little extra work, I could be somewhat better. Sure, I won't be Khalid, who is the champion of ABP, but like I can still be able to articulate myself better. I can still be able to stand up for my rights and say, no, I'm not okay with you discriminating against me. But also realize it's extremely necessary. At a point in which we tell you that these people are vulnerable and it's their only hope for them to actually fight or go against these oppressive structures, it's extremely necessary for you to actually allow for this culture to have. Therefore, we would rather prefer a world where you are brave and you actually fight. But also realize that on our side, in a debate of where you would rather push limits or like have constant mediocrity, we would rather just maximize potential, right? We would rather maximize happiness, which we told you that if euphoria that you get when you perhaps like get good scores in exams, or like when you actually achieve something, as opposed to they didn't actually tell us what the satisfaction is going to look like, right? And we also told you, even if you fail, you know that you tried, that you know that you're one step closer, you know that you were courageous. So on our side, we tell you, we beg you, be courageous and push limits.
Thank you. To end the debate, let's have the last speaker government reply.
Woo!
Thank you.
If this were a debate about which side can better push for societal progression, under which side will become more advanced, opposition will definitely win. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, this is not that debate. They conceded to the standards that the side that proves under the side that proves that happiness is better achieved, that more people are able to attain some sort of satisfaction in their shit lives, that is the side that wins. Opposition has done nothing to prove those standards or to at least achieve those burdens, right? So what am I going to do in my speech? Firstly, I'm going to tell you under which side better helps underprivileged people, and which side are people access to happiness better. So let's deal with the more non-contentious part of that debate. So basically like a majority of their case, right? In terms of stagnation and no societal progress and innovation. And the whole argument that they want to bring up to you was, we need minorities and oppressed people to fight oppression. Here's why this is unlikely. You want oppressed people to go against oppression. These are literally people that don't have any safety net. They have no political capital. They have no fallback plan. You want them to literally put their lives on the line for progression. And then they came up and threw you 101 examples of people that have succeeded. Malala, and then Mubarak, and then whatever debaters that they threw up to you. Fine. Yes, those are the people that have succeeded. You do not ever, under your side, engage with the fact that there are hundreds, thousands, millions of nameless people that have not been able to achieve that kind of success, not been able to achieve that form of happiness or satisfaction that they want to push under your side. Their side is very convenient in telling you that if you struggle, if you want to achieve a bigger goal, you will always succeed. Under our side, however, we were engaging in the fact that we told you, we dealt with the comparatives. We told you that even if they do succeed, they will want to try to push for more. First clash, which side better helps underprivileged people? They wanted to push for societal change. But how does this relate to the happiness of the individual? I think that's a question that's very hard for me to answer. I can't imagine the judges answering this question for them, right? So we told you that it's more likely that these people, even then, if they achieve whatever the opposition tries to push to you, it would make the other people that could not achieve that success unhappy, simply because that is the standard that they have failed to achieve, self-blame and all that, right? We told you that it's just harder to achieve satisfaction in their world, and because of the structural reasons, so i.e. racism, sexism, also the cost of failure is very high, also like the randomness of life. I think that one argument itself could have dealt with their entire case of how it's just unlikely for people to achieve happiness. Secondly, under which side does people have more happiness? I can't really give you any point that comes from the opposition that fails into this clash, but let's assume that the very big gigantic points I want to talk about, societal progression, innovation, if that relates to happiness, we tell you it's just unlikely, simply because you want to talk about the success figures, the success stories of a few individuals, but you never talk about the millions of people that are never able to achieve that kind of happiness. We tell you that the trade-off was simple. This is what they had to do. They had to defend a world where the satisfaction is large, but a few number of people. We told you that it's preferable if the satisfaction is less, but for more people, simply because the standard is that although the satisfaction is less, the number of people that are included in this satisfaction are people that never are able to achieve any kind of satisfaction in their life. This looks like vulnerable people. This looks like people that are oppressed. The very people that opposition want to defend are the people that they harm. For all those reasons, we're very proud to propose.
Yeah, this is the new convening home.
All right, thanks everyone. Please pause for the
One of the trophies here.
announcement.